Welcome back to the Nullified Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains Episode 2. That's right, I'm back, and we're going to be talking about the top 6 takeaways here for Episode 2. As I was struggling to keep it to 5, there was so much happening, but if you want some extended footage and extended coverage of this episode, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, so you can be informed when myself and Maki and Kahuna comes to you live later on this week to talk about this whole first week of action on Australian Survivor. But let's get straight into it. There's a lot to get through. Takeaway number 1, the king returns to the game. Simon is really annoyed. He says that when George comes back, he just knows he's going to make an entrance. He's going to be boasting. But we get a very low energy George returning to the game. And I've got to say, I was one of those people that said in the first episode that it was convenient that George wasn't actually in the game, so he couldn't get voted out in the first round. But looking at George's face when he came back and the absolute massive war scar he now has from that first challenge, I couldn't help but feel sorry for the guy. He said that he felt like maybe there would be a call back to his mom to say that his son broke his neck, and it was heartbreaking to see, he's in tears when he tells us this, but then he turns it around and laughs and says, well, I have to use these tears, so clearly playing on people's emotions and making them feel like he is less of a threat now that he's injured and that this big thing happened to them, and people tend to soften on him here as he weasels his way out of a very bad spot in this episode. The one thing I do want to say about George, though, is that he does make one really bad miscalculation at that challenge for immunity in this episode by saying that Stevie should not be in the puzzle section with him because he feels like they wouldn't be communicating well. And they choose Fraser to go into that puzzle, and the whole argument of winning and losing as a team, that's fair, but definitely George and Fraser lost them this challenge at the puzzle because they got to the puzzle at the same time and both of them just couldn't seem to work it out, while Stevie was sitting on the sideline trying to help them as much as he could, but he wasn't allowed to swap in and out and get involved in the challenge. So not a great look on George there, not really doing well in the puzzles. So if he's not good in the puzzles, if you're in that tribe, what is he good for in that tribe? Because you would expect him to be one of those brains that will come in and help there. He's going to have to bring it in the physical part of this game, and he did try, I would say, in the reward his best, but you can't get to a certain shape to be taking on players like Sean and Sam who've been training the whole life by just training for the last year, and it's going to be interesting to see where George fits in from a challenge perspective, but clearly he still has a massive threat on his back. So as we move to number 2 here, Shonee is the player to watch this season. I called it in the beginning of the season. I had on my tier rankings 3 legends, and Shonee was one of those 3 legends, and I feel vindicated and justified for putting her that high and giving her that much praise. She goes head to head with Simon in this massive power struggle in the villains tribe as they try and take control of the numbers and try and take control of who they would like to stay in the game. And she collects those soldiers in this game. She's got Liz now, who is her right-hand person, and she's also pulling in George as they form a part of this Spice Girls alliance, which I found really entertaining. And her pitch to her tribes is basically, George is the biggest target in this game. Like, why would you want to get rid of the guy who's the biggest target in the game? Because if you do that, you may be the next person to go when there is a tribe swap. So it's a pretty convincing, you would say, case that she's making here to keep George in the game. I did like the whole section with the principal, Shonee, talking to all of them, teaching them how to play this game. She's a 3 times player, and she's doing a bloody good job at it at the moment. I may do a power ranking as well each week to see where players in my mind are sitting, but if I did do that power ranking right now, she probably, spoiler alert, would be at number 1, playing the best game so far out of everybody that we've seen. Number 3, Michael came out of the gate far too hot. I didn't get an opportunity to talk about him in episode 1, but you could clearly see that he's a fan of this game. He's always wanted to play it. He gets out there. He's trying to take the whole thing by the scruff and actually dictate where the votes are going to go. And he had a massive target on George right from the start. And he just keeps going at that pace here this whole episode. And there's so much time in between tribal councils that I think that the social game is so important important. You need to be able to build connections, talk about life at home, get to know people. You know, I know not everybody likes small talk, but small talk has to form a part of your Survivor strategy. And it just seemed like he was that guy at the beach that just wanted to talk strategy, that just wanted to get people out, wanted to form his alliance, but he wasn't really building long-lasting great connections. And we all know as fans that at the end of the day, Survivor is a social game, and if you don't build those social connections, you're going to be out of the game sooner rather than later. He also had a really bad scene where he was talking to Simon about, let's make this vote happen against George, and Simon is trying to get information from him, like, who are you talking to, who's your closest people that you can bring in for numbers, because Simon is, you know, he's chomping at the bit to go and get George out. But Michael was very wishy-washy in that conversation, and it was clear to Simon that he wasn't really bringing much to the table as an alliance person. You need someone you can bounce ideas off. You need someone that can actually help gather numbers for you in the game, and he wasn't doing any of that. So he did, I would say, for the first 2 episodes, bring a lot of entertainment. I did watch it, and I did enjoy it. You know, I like sometimes seeing somebody go down in flames. I do feel bad for him that he did, but, you know, it's still entertaining. And his back and forth with George at Tribal Council was golden. A lot of the times, Tribal Councils can be very stale, very boring, and not much sometimes is given in those last bits of the episode, but the back and forth was golden. I think he did what he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to be a character this season and go out with a bang. It just so happens that that is not a winning strategy to win Survivor, and sadly, he is voted out here in the second spot. Now, number 4, Simon and Jordie. Where is Simon and Jordie going from here? They have been outsmarted and outclassed at this stage by Shonee. Shonee says that she wants to play with big targets around her, but does Jordie and Simon fit into that plan? I think Jordie definitely has a reputation on him. Simon definitely has a reputation as someone that could play a big game, but still hasn't done so. Simon is definitely right in wanting to target George. George is a massive threat, and everybody should be wanting to get George out of the game if they're not Shonee. Shonee needs George more than anyone else because she's also a big threat in the game. But in Simon's case, and in a lot of the cases of these other players out there, I would take the risk and get George out of there, because the longer you keep him in the game, George is that cockroach. He is the one that's going to find a way to stay in the game, even if it is by getting people to fight for him, like he did with Kyra playing her idol for him in the first season, and now Shonee going to bat for him. So you've got to take him out early on. The longer he's there, the more of a foothold he gets, and the more dangerous he's going to get as this game progresses. George has already weaseled his way into the game, so it's going to be an interesting battle between Shonee and George and Simon and Jordie coming up, because I do think Simon is not going to let this one go. But Simon does need to consider for his own game, does he go with the numbers right now? Because the new players, they do look up to him, they do see him as a leader, but they don't seem to want to vote with him. So at the end of the day, you can't play this game on your own. So does Simon change gears here? Will Jordie change gears? And will they potentially find a way to work with Shonee and George? That's going to be the interesting part of the storyline as we progress throughout the season. Number 5, Liz is an absolute beast that challenges. In my mind, she's becoming the most impressive newbie to date. She dominated in that reward challenge, going up against 2 of the proven vets in Haley and also Nina, who are both really good at challenges, and she had Shonee with her. Now, Shonee is definitely not a bad competitor, but I do think that if you look at that challenge, Liz really brought it in that challenge. And as an Olympic athlete, to go up against those 2 and beat them, and then also to go up against Nina one-on-one and also beat her in that instance, we've got to look out for Liz. She's going to be a threat this season when it comes to the physical department. And I love women that come to play and dominate at the challenges. So I want to see how this works out for her. Her smile in that segment where they show her footage from home and she has that smile gave me such Harlequin vibes. I don't know if anybody else thought she was Harlequin from DC. We've already got a Joker in this season. Do we now have a Harlequin? Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Overall, I feel good about her position. She's playing closely with Shonee. She seems to have some great game, and she's taking advice really well from Shonee. So I think within that alliance, she can get very deep into this game, and definitely, in my opinion, the most impressive newbie to watch so far. Number 6, the camp raid. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the camp raid when they went there. George went straight to the hatchet, tried to smack down the shelter until his tribe stopped him and said, "Hey, George, what are you doing?" Has he learned anything? Spilling out the beans on the floor? This is a social game, right? So players sometimes will remember these things, and maybe this counts against George if he gets to the end and if he needs votes. So I think from a social game point, he went back into his old habits, but those habits are not going to win him the game. It didn't win him the game last time. It sure as hell's not going to win him the game this time. If he took down the shelter, I don't think the heroes would have forgiven him for that. It's going to be interesting to see how he navigates that. Mimi didn't stand for it. She didn't like what they were doing, didn't like when they took all the food. From the food perspective, that was brutal to watch. Like, the heroes just won all this food not that long ago, and now they've lost all of it due to this camp raid coming in so early. But overall, I had a blast watching this episode of Australian Survivor. Let me know in the comments below. I do read them all. I will try and reply to everybody as they comment below what stood out for you. And be sure to subscribe and like, hit that notification bell, and catch you guys next time. Bye.